Hello, welcome to today's show. My name is Magela Pillai and I bid you a special welcome to Fireside Chats. I have in the studio with me today Sister Denise, who has been practicing Rajyoga Meditation for over 40 years. And today we're looking at the subject of purity of intention, which looks at why people do what they do. The purpose of this entire series is to take you, the listener, into the core of spirituality, to ask you to look at what your relationship with God is, to look at things like philosophical and spiritual integrity, and to look at how you integrate God into your daily life. Sister Denise will share with us how she embraces spirituality as far as this topic is concerned, but also how she includes God in her daily life, and she will obviously share with us her experience as to how you can do that as well. Sister Denise, a very warm welcome to today's show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us. Purity of intention is not something that we think of ordinarily on waking up. Why is this subject of importance to you?
Intention is very important in terms of what you do. In fact, why you do what you do is very often more important than what you do, because you can see what you do could look like a good thing, could look like a bad thing, but when you look at the intention behind it, it clarifies everything. So purity of intention is something that you have to consider in comparison with a person who does something because they're worried about what's going to happen to me, you see. So when you're worried about what's going to happen to me, that will contaminate your intention, because you don't have faith in actually the laws of karma. So when you do something so that it is of benefit in a general way, so that it is under your criteria the good thing to do, that makes that action very, very good. But if you compromise it with, well, I will not get recognized, or what will happen to me, or something like this, then the quality of the action that you do has much less beneficial effect. So that becomes a contamination of the action.
Sister Denise, I say that as far as human functioning is concerned, we as people often find ourselves in the position where we do the right thing for the wrong reason, and sometimes the wrong thing for the right reason. Is it ever okay to conduct oneself in that manner? Or not? And do you pay a price for your error in judgment?
Well, sometimes you do the right thing by mistake.
That is true, yes.
But I think, you know, what we're trying to do in spiritual practice is to be very conscious. What am I doing and why am I doing it? And if you have a really good intention, but you do something that's really not the right thing to do, the power of the intention will carry it, and it can actually transform it so that you can see in hindsight, well, actually that was a good thing to do. So whether the thing is the right thing or the wrong thing is connected very much with the intention behind it, and then also you have to look at the outcome, and then you can say, yeah, that was a good thing or not a good thing. Just an action by itself, out of context, you can't really say it's the right thing or the wrong thing. It's very much affected by the context.
Why is it important to have the right intentions behind what you say and what you do? And what is the difference between having the right intention and pure intentions? What is the difference?
Well, right intention, pure intention, you can say that's the same thing. But you know, sometimes people will be very clever at saying what is considered to be the right thing, but they will have an intention that is maybe selfish or that is for causing damage. And so it looks good, but it isn't good. So the intention really makes a difference, whether it is good or is not good.
What does one get out of having, well, evil intentions, malevolent intentions? Even though something may have the facade of being good, what does one get out of it? Because I've come to believe that the reason you return to a particular behavior, whether it's good or bad, is because you get something out of it.
Yes, of course.
What does one get out of it?
Well, sometimes one is doing it for revenge.
Okay.
Sometimes you're doing it for greed. Sometimes you're doing it out of ego. Any of these vices or negative emotions as the reason why you do something will compromise the quality of that action. And so what people get out of it, short-term benefit, or they look good. People are very concerned to look good, you know, and so they will get something out of it, but because the action is at the end of the day not a good action, they will also pay a price which is much higher than what they get out of it.
So
but they don't consider that.
Sister Denise, most people in their normal day-to-day functioning don't stop and question the intentions behind their actions. A lot of us, and I found myself in this position where you just speak, you just do, because this is the way you function. And I find myself quite often operating on what I call automatic pilot, where you do things this way because that's the way you were taught, and this is what you've become. Are you saying that people should take time to, where do you find time to stop and make this decision?
I think it's connected with love, you see.
Love?
Love. If you love, that's the underlying reason why you do something. That will make that a pure intention. You do something because of love. You see, you do something because you have love for humanity. You do something because you have love for, you know, the people who are in front of you. You care, you see. And of course it takes spiritual power to actually have that much love so that you are always aware of the benefit of people. But when you're weak, then you're worried about yourself. You want to benefit yourself very often at the expense of other people. And then you're not coming from a place of love, you're coming from a place of selfishness.
So, so what you're saying is that your intention determines the reward or punishment. So it's not the action, it's your intention behind the action.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
there are very few people who know that.
Well, this is an education.
Yeah, I suppose it is.
So we start to think of what's important, you know. Mostly education is about what can you get out of your studies, or how can you put it to your personal enrichment, but it's a very short-term gain. Whereas this education is about, let's look at the short-term, mid-term and the long-term and line them all up and then decide what you're going to do.
Okay. There are many who are watching today's show who will find that in almost everything that they do, or that they engage in, people that they engage with, they do have the good intentions, not to cause anybody harm, for this one's own betterment, etc. But their actions are not in alignment with that. You will hear a parent who believes in corporal punishment towards his children, saying, "I'm doing this for your own good." Okay, and the child starts to believe that he or she deserves that. What would your take be on such a scenario?
Well, here you're looking at belief systems which are unconsidered. People are handed out belief systems and that they just take it without thinking about it. many people, they don't engage in critical thinking. They just take what their parents did to them and they hand it on to the next generation. It's very, very common. And for a person to sit down with themselves and critique their parents goes against many taboos.
Mm-hmm.
And so the presence of taboos makes it such a risk for a person to do that they would rather be blind than coherent, which is a great tragedy. And I think that what we're trying to do with the Fireside Chats is to really ask people to think and ask people to take the risk of sitting down and really thinking, you know, do I want to pass on the legacy that I received, or do I really want to, you know, take charge of myself and my life and very conscientiously provide a legacy that I would be proud to be passing on.
Okay, so if somebody is caught in this cycle of where your conscience begins to bite you as far as your behavior is concerned, what is the procedure to purify your own intentions? Because sometimes you don't have to clean up your behavior, you've got to clean up just your mind in such a scenario.
Whatever you do in your mind is going to be reflected in your behavior, and I think that when the conscience starts to bite, that's going to happen in the middle of the night when you can't sleep, or when you're alone and you're just faced with this voice of conscience that normally you would be drowning out so that it doesn't bother you. And if you start to listen to it, it can be quite disturbing, because then it forces you to have to re-look at how you're leading your life and rethink the foundation of your personal ethical policy, which is actually a very good thing, but is scary for people. And I think part of what we're trying to do here is tell people, don't worry, even if it's scary, it's okay, do it anyway. And we will be covering so many topics that you will be getting information that you can use in this work of reassessing, why am I doing what I'm doing?
Mr. Denise, everyone has a dark side, and to a large extent their dark side, our dark side, affects the intentions behind our behavior. You do something that's coming out of one of your weaknesses. You act out of anger, you act out of revenge, you act out of dislike. Okay, largely because the soul has been hurt. How does one pull yourself out of that? Where you know that's your dark side that's operating.
If you know that you're operating out of having been hurt, then it means you're looking to be healed. And so there you have to think about, okay, how can I heal my soul? Well, you can't heal your own soul, but there is where you have a very good reason to approach the being of God, who is able to heal the soul. And there one has to really open oneself in front of such a being and say, okay, God, I know that I am hurting, and because of that I'm hurting other people. I need help, you know. So really that call for help is an act of humility, you know, which is difficult, because when a person's hurt and they do wrong things, they build up a lot of ego, which doesn't allow for the act of humility.
One can't heal by oneself. That's extremely interesting. Most people, Sister Denise, are of the view that love from another person, two legs, heals.
I think it can relieve the pain temporarily,
Pain relief is not healing?
No.
Oof! That's a mind-blowing one. Hold on, take us through that. Pain relief is not healing.
Well, I mean, in the pharmaceutical industry, they have produced a great many opportunities for availing oneself of pain-relieving medications. And when they wear off, then you have to have another one. So it's quite good for business in that sense. But to actually heal the pain in the soul, I think you have to go in there and see, you know, what happened. And, you know, there are wounds. And those wounds, how can you heal yourself? It takes so much strength, so much courage that you don't have. So I think you do need to, you know, open yourself to God and to another person, in both, in order for the healing process to really set in, you see, because we are in the context of human society, and if we shun human society in our healing process, that also compromises the healing process. It has to be both.
Okay, so it seems that we've digressed from the topic, but we haven't actually, because purity of intention is related to how you feel, and a wounded person, you are saying, perpetuates the wound?
They talk about the wounded healer.
What is that?
Well, wounded healer is someone who has really done the work on the self, which you also have to do in the context of opening yourself out to another trusted human being and to God, because you need to take that strength from God. You need to open yourself up to another human being because you have to become honest, you see. And if you're not honest with another human being, they will know, and they'll call you on it, you see. In your relationship with God, you can get away with not being honest with God because God's response is very silent and very subtle. So you can avoid the response from God which says, you know, you've got to become really honest here. It is so subtle and so silent that this is why another human being is really important.
Okay. So if one has to include God in this healing process, where you want to become a person who, in almost everything that you do, have the right intention and the right action, take us through how you engage with God so that you do become somebody who is not perpetuating your own sorrow.
What you have to take from God is light and power. And that light and power actually changes the composition of your soul. And
what does that mean?
The soul is distorted, is darkened by this loss of spiritual integrity, loss of spiritual purity. And it's actually what we call the yoga, where the soul and God are in such alignment that the light of God actually is absorbed into the soul, and the soul actually changes qualitatively, and then the person is able to operate in freedom. The contamination of the soul is a bondage that compels the soul to carry on acting in the wrong way. You know, you can use your willpower to, you know, behave very nicely when you're paying attention, but as soon as that's, you know, away, then you go back to your old way. So it's very temporary, very superficial. What you want is a really deep healing. And so the honesty factor is important, but then you have to take the light. You can't take that from a human being. That you have to take straight from God. And for that you have to practice the meditation, because the meditation is a way for you to take that light. That's what meditation is about.
Sure. So just formulating pure intent behind an action, you've got to do a lot of work, don't you, before you actually create the next thought in order to act.
But
because
you don't have time for that, you see.
No,
so
you don't.
This is why taking light from God is very good, because then it's natural, it's automatic that you do the right thing.
Okay. Sister Denise, what would be the sign of somebody who's operating from the right inner space? That's what purity of intention is, isn't it? When you're operating from the right inner space. How do you know? What is your gauge?
There are little signs in the face, in the vibration and atmosphere of a person, but those are very subtle. I think the most tangible is the outcome of the action, the impact of the action. And you can tell from that. And you have to look at it even quite long term. People can feel if there's something not quite right. Don't trust it.
Okay. So then I assume once you see a positive outcome, then you'll be inspired to act from pure intention in the future as well?
That's right.
Okay.
The outcome is very important because it validates.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because at the beginning of today's show you said that doing something and only wanting praise and recognition is not a good thing. You put it under the category of being weakness. Sister Denise, it sits very deeply with people to be seen, to be heard, to be acknowledged. It sits very deeply with people all across the world. Why is it wrong to do something and seek praise? Isn't it normal? Isn't it human? Doesn't it make you feel good that you're praised for the good that you do? Isn't that part of your good karma?
No, actually, it compromises your good karma, because in the laws of karma, it is said that you have to be very clear that what your action is good. And if you're looking for the reward of it through praise and validation, then the ultimate reward is going to be reduced by an enormous amount. And that's not necessarily why you're doing the pure karma, you see. And it also makes you very dependent on public opinion, which can dance you around a great deal. You must have heard people who feel that whatever they do, it's not good enough.
Yes.
Why do they say that? Because somebody said, well, that's not good enough. And they've internalized it. And they're always looking for somebody to say it is good enough, but they're never going to do that. So you really make yourself into a slave when you're looking for public recognition.
Okay, so what is the antidote to that?
Well, you have to make it very clear to yourself that who you are and what you're doing is correct.
Okay, so does one get to a state where you don't need a pat on the back from outside?
Absolutely. Why do you need a pat on the back from the outside?
Okay, all I'm saying is that it's very deep with people.
Very deep, but we have to think about this, because even though it's very deep, it doesn't mean that it's the best thing.
Okay, so something can be natural and bad.
You can be manipulated by that.
That makes you weak.
And that is why you shouldn't look for it.
Okay.
Because people can notice, oh, you're easy for me to play. That's not good for your dignity. That's not good for your self-respect.
Okay. Okay. So, on a minute-to-minute basis, does a spiritually enlightened person stop and think about every single thing that they do? Isn't that
Well, that's
going to
very
cause
time consuming.
Yes. How do you go about it?
I think you need
because
to...
some decisions require split-second making.
You need to develop an instinct or an intuition. And that's where you're really fine-tuning your conscience, because your conscience can give you a split-second answer. And it's to do with harmony. So when you're in line with yourself, when you're in your integrity, a little bit of discord, you will notice it immediately. And if everything you do stays with that harmony, you can do it with the speed of a virtuoso violinist, playing some of these very, very beautiful classical music. Any little bit of discord in that high speed ruins the piece.
Okay, it sounds like somebody has to be quite in tuned with what's going on inside to come to that decision and awareness.
I think that's
Denise, a lot of people are facing this way and not this way.
Well, that's part of what we're trying to encourage people to do, is to be connected with the inner self, to turn within and trust the inner voice. Follow it.
Okay, trusting the inner voice. Say more about that.
Well, that's really the conscience, isn't it?
Yes.
So when you're lined up internally, properly aligned, and you're connected with God through that, also through that we call the soul conscious stage, then you will naturally and intuitively do the right thing, because your intention cannot be wrong when you're aligned with the Supreme Being.
Sure, that is very powerful. Your intention cannot be wrong if you are aligned with the Supreme Being. Okay. Thank you, Sister Denise. I think that brings us to the end of today's show. We thank you on behalf of the audience for your wisdom and your time today. So Sister Denise has shared with us today the importance of purity of intention. If this is not something that you have ordinarily thought about, I suggest that you do so. It is actually a very interesting topic, and as Sister Denise shared, the intentions behind what we do has a great impact on our lives and has bearing on the consequences of what we do. So she also shared how if one is in alignment with God, then your intentions are automatically pure, and the outcome of what you do is also beneficial for you, which is very powerful indeed. I found the subject to be very interesting because as a human being, one doesn't stop from a moment-to-moment basis and pay attention on that level to the things that we do and say. So I thank Sister Denise for sharing that insightful knowledge with us, and I hope that it has been of some benefit to you and you can take it to your life wherever you may be and apply it and share it with the people that you know. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you soon.